We're all looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us on NFT utility and the creator economy, where we are and what's next. Friends, thank you for being here. You have our attention.
Okay, guys, happy to be here with James, Gwendall, Ioana, and Jonny. And today, as just mentioned, we'll be discussing where we are with the NFTs and the creator economy and where we think we're going to move quite quickly in the future. So the way I will be going about this, we'll be doing just a quick intro about ourselves. We'll dive into what we've done, what we think the problems are, what could be solved, etc. And then what is going to be the big driver of the mass adoption to get basically the first big batch of people onto NFTs through the creator economy. So let's start off with the right side. So feel free.
Hey, hello everyone. So I'm Gwendall, I'm the founder of MetaHood. What we do is really a portal to the open metaverse. And the first crack we are taking at it is providing a marketplace basically focused on the metaverse assets and digital real estate in particular. So we aggregate metaverses, like all the biggest open metaverses, so basically Sandbox, Decentraland, the other side, and we provide easiest experience to trade assets there. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's it.
I'm James Haft. I'm the chairman of DLTX. We're the only publicly traded company which is building out the infrastructure for decentralized transactions and communications, listed in Norway and moving on to NASDAQ in the United States.
Hi everyone, I'm Ioana Surpateanu. My background is in traditional finance, but I went full mode on crypto about 2 years ago. I'm currently working with a variety of projects. I have what they call a DGen portfolio career in crypto. So I'm Chief Innovation Officer for Swash, which is a Web3 data monetization platform. And I support a variety of other projects across the board. So decentralized finance launchpads, interoperability protocols, digital fashion companies, gaming projects. And I also sit on the exec board of the Multi-Chain Asset Managers Association, which is probably the coolest association in terms of coalescing around the best DeFi protocols globally. And I don't want to take up too much of the time introducing myself, so over to you.
Hey, I'm Jonny Seymour. I'm a CMO, but I worked in advertising previously for 13 years. I owned an ad agency in Soho, which I sold up to jump into the Web3 space because I was so passionate about it. I've advised on some really successful projects in the past, and I'm currently building something called The Uncharted, which is a project that's bridging the gap between traditional finance. We've partnered with some Swiss banks to bring that to the NFT space, which we're really excited about.
And my name is Toms, concluding the intros. So basically have quite a bit of a background in just e-commerce brand building, white labeling, dropshipping, and that sort of areas. Been on 2 advisory boards of 2 play-to-earn projects. Been basically quite active in the NFT space for basically around 2 years right now. And I'm right now building a social network that basically is replacing the fact that you as a creator would have an account or a profile for a digital land property. So basically, yeah, engage your community in the digital land. So guys, thank you for the intros. So let's move on and let's get into the grid and interesting stuff. So could you all just tell us about what deep dives have you had with the creator economy and its links to the NFTs, and what problems are you currently seeing, or what areas do you think are just not working out right now?
Do you want me to start? Because you're looking directly at me.
Please do.
So in terms of direct experience, aside from mentoring over 100 projects that have a lot to do with the NFT space within the Outlier Ventures Basecamp, in my previous role as Chief Strategy Officer for a decentralized Oracle provider called DIA, I was involved in creating 2 NFT-related projects. One of them was the first data rights management NFT collection. So basically, if you own the NFT, you could access a particular data set. And as the data set grew increasingly important in terms of people wanting to access it, the value of the NFT grew. So that was kind of like the basic thing we did with NFTs at DIA back in the day. So it was a pretty early project. And my other project, which was my favorite NFT project, was a structuralization NFT-related suite of projects that were meant to make NFTs more integratable. It's like it was easier to plug them into DeFi in a more Lego-like architecture, which is what DeFi is and which is what we want to bring NFTs to. So basically what we did, as an Oracle provider, you source data from all sorts of places, decentralized exchanges, centralized exchanges, off-chain as well. So what we did, we looked at the NFTs across the board. The market is still extremely fragmented, and this is one of the issues because you asked me what some of the problems are. And we built some structure around it so that it was easier to create composability between DeFi and NFT. So these were two of the projects that I was directly hands-on, bottom layer almost, like at infrastructure, plumbing level involved in. So there were some issues that I saw there. I mentioned one of them, fragmentation of the NFT market and where the NFTs are sold, how they're minted, where the metadata is stored. These issues still haven't been resolved. But in addition to that, I think across the board, so within the NFT wider ecosystem, we have a variety of issues, right? So there's the whole promise of the open metaverse where you would have seamless interoperability and value transfer in an automated way. Well, that doesn't happen. So what currently happens is that you have back-end partnerships between projects, and this is how the interoperability via NFTs is created. You can argue that there are other types of assets and value creation that is not in an NFT format, but the same problem applies to those. So the interoperability issue needs to be fixed to have a scaled up ecosystem. Then there's the metadata storage, ideally in an ideal scenario, and I know that you want to add to that because you're an expert in decentralized storage, but the ideal scenario would be to host all of the metadata related to NFTs on chain. And for a variety of reasons, that's almost impossible to be done at scale now, right? Like, it's expensive, infrastructurally, maybe we're not there to support this huge demand that we still have for NFTs, etc. Another issue is regulation, and I know no one wants to talk about that, but regulation is incoming. I live in a EU member state. We have a huge regulatory, piece that is in force now, probably gonna be captured as 1 year from now. But there's an upcoming piece that will focus specifically on DeFi and NFTs. And I'm afraid to see what's gonna be in there because I believe that the gap in terms of understanding from the regulatory and policymaking side, understanding what NFTs are, what they offer in terms of direct ownership to the internet, access tools, they simply don't get it. So regulation is looming over us as well. So this is another of the problems, but I'll pass it on to others to add to that model.
Going to the interoperability problem, which I think is a big problem, there's a company that I'm invested in now with a gentleman named Neil Stevenson who wrote Snow Crash, which is the book that actually defined what a metaverse is in 1992. Before there was graphic interfaces for computers, he foresaw it, and so it's called Lamina 1, and it's going to be a layer 1 protocol that enables you to spin up a metaverse without having technical knowledge. So it'll end up becoming a metaverse of metaverses with the tools available to grab other APIs and other technologies and bring them in and create a metaverse on your own without technical knowledge, which I think will start to address that issue. I think it's interesting, everyone, to put things into context. Everyone always thinks what they're doing is new and that they're on cutting edge and that the things you're doing haven't been done before. But the truth is the idea to compensate creators is as old as the printing press, right? We've always been trying to pay creators, royalties and publishers and all these intermediaries that grew out. And what we're at now is not in a new world, but in a new framework where we can disintermediate and have peer-to-peer self-sovereignty over the concepts where you're no longer being told how you have to do it, but being given the tools to free yourself to do it. About 10 years ago, I was an investor in something called Taringa, which is the largest social media network in Latin America. They had about 15 million users. And the users were Argentinian, and Argentina was one of the first countries to adopt Bitcoin because they were trying to use it as a hedge against hyperinflation. And so the creators at Taringa, the founders, who are legendary in their country, decided to have a creator economy, which what's a creator economy 10 years ago, right? And so they started to offer Satoshis to people that would create content, and then you'd get more Satoshis if a brand picked it up and used it. The problem is nobody knew what a Satoshi was, right? And nobody understood it, so they suffered from what, one of the most common things that happens to me in looking at investments, which is being early looks a lot like being wrong, right? And so you have to remember that just because it's not working now doesn't mean it's not going to work. It just means that the tools haven't coalesced around you. The primordial ooze hasn't created, beings yet that can actually support your activity. And so I think if we listen to Ioana, basically what we have is, from one end of the spectrum, is that we're building the tools to be able to do these decentralized compensation structures. But the other end of the puzzle is actually much more important, and that's community and people who will actually use it. And the dirty secret is that those communities don't exist yet, right? And so Turinga, that had 15 million users, had trouble doing it. One of the interesting things to watch right now, I think, is Twitter. Right? This thing with Twitter is not, it could end up really being a big catalyst to what's happening in our industry, because all of a sudden you have a target market community with hundreds of millions of users, with a guy who's going all out for crypto, whether it's for the greater good or his own good. We'll talk about it later. But he's all out for crypto. And all of a sudden, you could see someone that puts in the back room, without letting you know, a crypto economy that you can access through a interface that you already understand, that already has community and technology and exposure built into it. And I think that those are the two ends of the spectrum that need to get addressed to have NFTs become relevant and to have the creator economy become viable.
Gwendall, what about you?
Yeah, to jump back on the utility aspect, I think that's super interesting and crucial right now. It's really a topic that a lot of things have to be done, right? Right now, what we like is really standards and cooperation in between players, in between the entrepreneurs and platforms that are launching in the open metaverse, and even all creative platforms. Right now, we have standards for NFTs, right? We have Ethereum 721, 1155. We know how we can consider a token, how we can transfer it, how to manage ownership on top of it, but that's it. And it's great because on design you can do whatever you want with it. But now, as we get utility around these NFTs, right? We have a whole bunch of different objects that are created as NFTs. Every platform that integrates these NFTs integrates a different way to interact with them. So, if you take, for example, metaverse assets, right? Every single metaverse has their own standard on the way they consider assets. And it's sort of a problem, because if you want to be able to transport one object from one world to another, you need a way to unify the way they are handled. And right now, all these platforms are kind of competing with each other. As a metaverse, you want your people and users to come and stay in your own metaverse. So many projects are being built as walled gardens, and we cannot, it's not a critique. It's normal, it's just the way it works, and you have to make your, whatever you're building as big as possible. But it's for us as a community and builders and makers to create these standards. So it's something I think that will be really necessary. If you take, quick example, rental, right now you own your asset, but it would be great if you would be able to, leave it to somebody and be sure that you will get it back at some point. In real life, it doesn't work this way. You lend something to someone, and the person disappears or forgets about it. But what's great with NFTs, it's programmable, right? So we should be able to make it work easily and safely. And it doesn't exist yet. There is no standard. So there are a few projects, and these are the kind of utility things we need to build.
Jonny, what about you?
Yeah, so I think to drive it forward, really, and bring in more and more users and to get mass adoption, I think the words have already been dirtied, right? If I see metaverse in the press, or if somebody talks about it on the street and they don't know what I do, or if I generally will chat to people, they don't like it already, even though they don't know what it is. The same with NFTs. They don't care, they don't like it, they don't want to know about it. And I think we've already started to see that brands like Reddit have employed that in their marketing strategy, right, to bring in a different terminology. Ultimately, the underlying technology is exactly the same. And I think we'll start to see that brands enter in the space, particularly the bigger ones with a big marketing campaign, won't refer to any of the technology. They'll make it as seamless as possible and try and bring users in. Just as if we look back at probably the history of metaverses, as a kid, I was obsessed with World of Warcraft, right? And that was probably the closest thing to a metaverse that I played before I knew what the metaverse was, and I was fully immersed in it. It was a social experiment. You could buy currency in the game, you could trade, you could do everything that you're saying we could do in these metaverses now, but it didn't have that word. And I think if the same game came out now and it was said to be this metaverse adventure world, I actually think that nobody would touch it.
I think until the point of time where you're not talking about the technology, it's not going to have mass adoption.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know how your phone works. You don't know how an airplane works. You don't know how a television works. Right? But somehow you use them all. But if I told you that you needed to understand all these acronyms to use your phone, you'd never use the phone. Right? And so it's not until people are telling you about the features and the things, the ways that this device or this platform empowers you. That's when you start, when it's faster, cheaper, more scalable, more interesting, when it's magic, right? That's when it becomes big.
So I have, sorry guys. I do appreciate and support an articulated presentation of your points. I have to dispute it because I actually, from that perspective, come from a very crypto purist point, which makes me think and induce and push people to learn more about the underlying tech, not at intricate level. I don't think everyone should know granularly what ZK rollups are, for instance, but they should understand the difference between various chains. They should understand the difference between infrastructure layer, protocol layer, application layer for their own benefit. Who knows what they can come up with? I mean, if we're living in an open source environment and we're aggregating people towards creating new products, why should developers be the only ones who have access to that in-depth knowledge? I think, we have the chance to open it up to everyone.
I can answer the question.
Go ahead.
Why shouldn't they? Because people are lazy
and
they don't care.
I agree,
and it's
but we
boring.
No, it's
But
not.
Ioana,
We should
to
alter.
most people, if you ever if I speak to my partner about cryptocurrency or
Change
NFTs,
your partner. I'm kidding.
she's just like she just switches off. If I talk to
Yeah.
some of my friends about it, they're like, "Please don't talk to me about this." So I only talk to people in the circles, and I go to events where we all talk about it, and we're all super passionate. But to most people, it is boring.
But it shouldn't be. So listen, and we can move on. The way that I think about, you touched on some very good points in terms of user and creator and access. With Web3, for the first time, we have users and creators interfacing and monetizing directly at infrastructure layer. So you can create via an NFT or another tool, you can create content, own it, and change the way a certain protocol evolves or create an ecosystem around it at infrastructure layer. That hasn't happened before,
So I totally
right?
agree. We are a infrastructure provider. That's my company does. And I can tell you the dirty secret in this that you guys have to all deal with is nobody cares. Okay, nobody cares.
I do.
I know, but the large percent that if you want to get to mass adoption, people just don't care. All they want is magic. Okay, this is pure Steve Jobs. This is how you got the iPhone. This is how he changed the world, is that he didn't make you understand what a database is. He didn't make you understand what cellular communications are. You don't know if you're using SMS, WhatsApp, blah, blah, blah. You don't care. Can you send that picture? Can you get that date? Can you get the content? That's all you care about. What you want is magic, right? And to me, the magic is to not have to know the technology.
Yeah, I agree with that. The main difference being that were you a user of Apple in the early days, you couldn't be part of the revenue generating mechanic. But now you can in DeFi and crypto, right? If you're the first layer of user, you can be a part of the success of the project. So that's the main difference in terms of magic.
Guys, I need to add one point.
Sorry?
I need to add one point.
Go for it.
Okay,
So
go
obviously, all of this is beautiful and nice and seamlessness, not seamlessness, learning or not learning about the ecosystem. But we're in year 2022. We've literally just had a lot of creators making a lot of NFTs, creating a lot of somewhat communities around them. But what we need to address is how we're going to get them on this year and the next year. And in the how can we do it now? And how can we do it on a mass scale? And in the context of creators, let's be honest, they're lazy. When you from working with the creators, or for example, A-list celebrities, or just people who have mass audiences, and through them, you actually get the larger public on board as well, right? And when you actually, let's say, offer a product to a creator or an influencer, they themselves, at million% of the cases, don't even know what they're doing. They're doing for the money. And yet, when you are trying to onboard them, you're not talking to the actual creator. You're talking to their management or agency. And think about it in this way. Like, for example, I mean, I think we can all agree, and everyone in the audience as well, is that the quickest way how we can get a very high amount of people on the, basically on the NFT concept on the Web3 world is through social networks, right?
Well, but it's bigger than that.
Sure.
The way, if you want to grow fast quickly, you have to work backwards. You have to go fishing where the fish are, okay? You have to find large communities that already exist and have communications. It could be a social network or other networks, right? But a network, a pre-existing group of people that have a common interest that are already communicating, and do something simple. Okay, the first thing that's big isn't going to be all-consuming meta from Mark Zuckerberg, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be, I push this button and I get XYZ, and isn't that cool, and it turns viral. And it might end up being incredibly dumb and unimportant in the bigger picture in the long run, but that doesn't matter. Because what matters is getting people engaged.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for once, I fully agree with you. And this is what kicked off DeFi summer, right? You had Aave Compound, they already had the community, they already had the product, and then they just enabled yield farming and all of these amazing, liquidity-related processes that you can engage in via the click of a button, like you say, and then people got extremely rich and hooked. So yeah, totally agree.
I mean, I have to agree that nobody cares, honestly. You live in a bubble. We live in a bubble. We are in Twitter bubble, we all care about decentralization. But talk about it, take a random person in the street and explain what you do. The person will think you're a crazy person, we live in a bubble, and it's great, We are the innovators, we're bringing it. I think a good parallel we can make in the space we're at is like music. Back in the day, remember, we had MP3s. It was all about MP3s, right? And then you had Napster, you had a platform to get MP3s, and then you had the iPod. And then now you have Spotify. And do you talk about MP3? No, you don't. You don't talk about formats anymore. You just listen to music. You go to an app, you listen to your music, you do your, whatever you want to do, the use case, the end goal, and you don't talk about the format anymore, the technology. And I think that's where we need to head, in the NFT space as an industry. We need to keep this decentralization, infrastructure, and participative protocols and all we are building, but we have to make it digestible for the I won't say normies. It may be insulting, but yeah, to people who don't care about the technicalities about what we're doing.
But talking about, again, just to get back to the headline of it, what do you think are the best vehicles to actually get that mass bump of people on board?
Yes.
What is it?
So I think we had a shot.
If you knew the answer, you'd be a billionaire, by the way.
Right?
Exactly, and there would be no one in the room right now.
We had a shot in 2021 at onboarding a lot more people, and we had a chance, and we had the world's attention. But influencers, celebrities, and horrible brands decided to destroy the reputation of the NFT and crypto space by just destroying their communities and taking advantage of them. They built this trust.
But that's how you know it's real. The fact is that's actually the validation of the network.
Yeah,
so the next step really is to onboard people in an honest and trustworthy way, to build communities and build brands and make them better and have them be a part of something, rather than just using them as a cash cow, which is what we've seen in the last year.
Not entirely. Come on. I mean, there are people in the room whom I know who are honest creators. They don't feel the industry.
I'm talking influencers and brands
the tooling.
that come
they're
in.
They're a necessity. They're an integral part of major marketing processes for any major NFT project. That's the reality we live in.
Oh,
we live
NFT
in
influencers are fine. I'm talking about people like Floyd Mayweather, Jake Paul, people like that come into the space that actually don't care about anything to do with the space. They go, my fans will buy my NFTs and I will make 5 million for doing nothing. I'll pay this guy 50 grand to make it.
But that's how you know
Happy
NFTs
days.
are real.
Yeah.
The carpetbaggers and the people taking advantage, they only go to where the real action is and where the real opportunity
flow.
is. Right. And so what they are doing is they're like the bellwether. They're the early adopters that you follow. Where do you figure out how do you make money on digital communications? It's pornography. Right? Pornography has always been the leader in creating revenues online, right? So
I take your word for that.
Well, when I started Condo.com in 2003, right? And we needed to figure out how to show real estate in 2003 that was aggregated globally. And so we couldn't figure out how do you show this stuff. So literally we went to porn sites and Apple App Store are the two places we looked at. And however they were monetizing video, however they were creating distribution, however they were doing their advertising campaigns, we just copied it.
So James, basically looking at bubbles and looking at porn.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really, it's all you
to
gotta do.
answer-
It's all you gotta do.
To answer your question, I think what will get us out of the bear market and will subsequently generate mass adoption or a new layer of increased user adoption is going to come from the gaming world. I mean, it just suffices to look at the numbers. 200 billion yearly revenue in the traditional gaming world, 30 billion monthly active users, it's half of the world's population. Yeah, we can all agree the first implementation of Web3 gaming has features that need to be improved on, definitely. But I think, I think that has been understood, incorporated, and the next gen gaming projects that we will see are going to onboard many, many users into NFTs, crypto, even DeFi. It depends on how you integrate those games. The problem is that then I would actually have to agree with all of you that people will get increasingly disinterested in understanding about the technology, right? And potentially not even caring about crypto, even though crypto offers that model for them to earn and port the value that they earn from one game to the other. But I guess it remains to be seen. I'm extremely bullish on gaming. I think, like I said, let's have this conversation 1 year from now and see where we are. And if gaming was the catalyst, I think it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree. I do think gaming will be the catalyst, but again, I just think it's got to be invisible and it can't be taken advantage of the consumers. It needs to be to their advantage and not to the corporation or the company's advantage to get all these people in, because people are wary of it now. And I'm not sure if you're kind of in with a lot of the gaming community or you see a lot of the gaming threads and you've only got to go on Reddit or any kind of forum that talks about it, and they hate NFTs and cryptocurrency. And I don't know why, and I think it is because they've probably seen people make a load of money, get burnt and disappear, and they just think, we don't want to be a part of that.
But I don't think, I'm going to be outlier. I don't think it's gaming. I think it's a social media communication platform. Because I think that gaming is a very specific audience, and that, WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, those are universal platforms with much bigger appeal to much larger audiences. And I think the idea of self-sovereignty and privacy and owning your own data and owning how your data is monetized is actually going to become much more important very quickly.
But that's part of gaming, right? Even the social part. You can integrate something like Lens Protocol into a game easily.
But I agree it'll be used inside of games, but I think it'll be bigger outside of games. I think there'll be more users. I think there's more users for WhatsApp than there are for games.
And Gwendall, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. Gaming can be a catalyst, definitely. One big problem we have right now is you have a lot of Web3 companies doing gaming and don't know how to build a game.
It's low quality.
And real game developers have a really bad image of NFTs and Web3 in general. For them, it's just, they have the image of a space of pure speculation. Like, it's only, if you do NFTs, it's only to make a profit. They have like a pure approach of trying to build a game, good experience, good, game design.
The problem is in gaming, the problem in gaming is that the great gaming businesses are all centralized entities that have had the ability to deliver to you the same concepts as decentralized crypto. Like FIFA could have offered you interoperability and trading of assets and moving of your FIFA coins between different platforms. They could have even done it just within EA Sports, from sport to sport, and they haven't done it because they make their money in an adverse way to you. They are anti-crypto, and those are the big games. And it's going to take 5-10 years for games like that to become out there, which are based on crypto and open peer-to-peer permissionless transactions. So I just think that the profit motive is going to hurt us from that perspective.
Yeah, just before, because I still want to defend gaming.
The microphone's not on. The microphone's not on. There we go.
In a second, the reason why developers are not attracted is because the free-to-play model with the advertising angle was profitable until now. Now it's starting to change. Apple has pulled off some significant features that will alter that model. So once the traditional game developers will figure out a way to make Web3 and crypto monetizable, we'll have a different story.
We're going to stop right there. Thank you. Everybody, thanks the panel.